Welcome to Fossil Creek Tree Farm and Nursery. I'm Max. I'm going to do a little garden coaching today. We're going to be talking about repotting plants. Specifically today we're going to be doing some tropicals, and in August might want to be inside, so taking care of the tropicals is an appropriate thing for now. Although of course these guys in the summer, you can put them out on your patio in the shade and they'll enjoy it. Of course, they're tropicals, so the heat's not a problem, and they're going to grow a little faster, and you can dress up your patio, and then as it gets cooler in the fall, you can bring them back inside. We have a long growing season here, so if you have some that are looking a little tight in their pots, good idea to move them up a little bit. You want to go bigger, but not too much bigger, and that'll do a few things. Make them a little bit easier to take care of, because if they've got a restricted root ball, you may have to water them more often just to keep up. And also, if you get them into a bigger pot, they're going to grow faster and look better. And what we're going to do now is kind of show you some techniques on it. I've got a couple here that you can kind of see. This guy, this Ficus Benjamina, and you can see he's a little tight here. Pretty good sized plant. Of course, we have an example here of one of the first things you can do. That one's past its usefulness. Those stakes like that are typically used at the grower to stabilize the plant early on, but typically by the time you're purchasing it, that stake has outlived its usefulness, so we can dispense with it. And we can get the tree tag out of the way. Has a little care guide on the back, just as a general comment. When you buy shrubs or bedding plants or tropical plants, anything, not a bad idea to have a little file someplace where you can keep your tree tags. So if you want to buy another one, or if you have a question about care, or you want to ask somebody, say you're having a problem with it, you may have forgotten the name, you can just refer to your file, and then when you are asking somebody about it, when you give them the right name, just speeds things up. And we'll get into the technique here. Number one, we're going bigger. This guy is, that's about a 9-inch across there. So you want to go bigger, enough larger to improve the plant situation, but also you don't want to go too big. You want the plant to be in a good looking proportion to the pot. This one here, that one's like 9 inches at the top. I'm pretty close to it at the bottom. Typically your plastic growing pots are nearly cylindrical, whereas a lot of the ceramic pots that you're going to be putting them in have some taper to them. This one is 12 inches inside at the top, and at the very bottom it's 9 inches. So a nice increase, but of course it's we're talking, it's 12 inches deep. And the soil ball here is about 7 inches. So even though it's about the same size at the bottom, this guy's a lot deeper. So it'll be an appreciable increase in your soil ball size. Now, as far as the technique is concerned, this pretty much goes for everything. If you're repotting it, or planting it, and I'm talking if it's a bedding plant or a tropical plant, a shrub, or if you've decided you're going to plant a 30-gallon tree, the first thing you do before you start really doing anything is water the plant. Thoroughly. You want to make sure it's had a big drink and it's thoroughly moistened. And then, of course, now you may say, well, I could do that once it's in here. Well, one of the things is if it's a shrub or a tree, you probably are going to do like a root stimulator treatment when you plant it. Well, you don't want to apply that, or if it were a bedding plant, you might be putting a water-soluble fertilizer on it. It's best to not make those applications of those kind of things to a plant that's really needing a drink. If it's stressed out, really, really dry, needing a drink, you don't want to apply root stimulator or other things like that. Not an absolute that it could bother it, but it could. But if you water it thoroughly, in here, what your pot does is, if you put it in here and you water it, that water doesn't necessarily have to go through the root ball, because it's got a big space around it that it can go out, and you might not get it thoroughly moistened. If you do it while it's still in this pot, the pot makes that water go through the root ball. And I did this one time years ago. I was repotting or putting a dwarf Japanese maple into a pot, and I did what I just did here. I must have done it 4 or 5 times to make sure it was thoroughly moistened, and then I pulled it out of the pot and I could see dry spots. So this guy, you can see he really got wet all the way through. But if you were to pull it out like I did with that Japanese maple and you see dry spots, you know, you can put it back in, water it some more, or you can also turn it on its side and water directly onto those spots that didn't get good and wet. And now, set that guy over there. Pull our pot over. And along with the theme of getting things good and moist, I could have done this ahead of time. I guess I should have. But you want your potting soil to be moist. Of course, typically potting soils have got, it can be a organic ingredient or a synthetic ingredient that is a gotta turn my phone off. Okay, there we go. I'm sure that's important. We'll do that later. And they've got in the potting soil, there's typically a moistening agent that if it weren't there, the potting soil would tend to repel water because it's dry. But they've got a moistening agent in there that when you apply water, potting soil really takes up the moisture quick. See, that's already, it didn't repel it, it absorbed it. It's got enough in there, you'd squeeze it out. So, slide that in there. Of course, another good thing about moistening it when you put it in here is if you were to pot it up in here, then it's a little harder to moisten. And also, if you water too quickly, you know, really just a bunch of water fast, you've got perlite in your potting soil, which is there to improve the drainage and make it porous and light. Well, it is porous and light, so if you water real fast and hard, your perlite can float to the top, and you've kind of degraded the efficiency of your potting soil because your light drainage stuff has gone to the top. Whereas if you do it like this, you maintain it mixed throughout the potting soil. The other thing that the technique that I use is, and it's not as big a deal right here because this one's relatively easy, but a lot of times if you have plants that have a lot of foliage at the bottom and some of them may be fragile, handling the plant and putting it in here and putting the soil around it is kind of a pain. You may end up, you know, breaking some parts of the plant. So the easy way to get around that is you look at your soil ball and you can see how high it is on the pot. So it's right there. So basically it's right about there. So you're going to note that because you watered this thoroughly, put it to the side. Then you can use your pot, which not only do you not have plant in the way, it's super light, and you can gauge that to get the right height in your pot. Noted that that's about where it was. So when we set it in there, you can't quite see that. It's a little below the rim here. You can push down a little bit. This is going to settle over time, so I always plant it a little bit higher than I would like it to eventually be because it'll settle some. But you want to leave a little drop so that it facilitates watering it. And then after you do that, you can kind of set the plant in there just to gauge it. It's easy on this one. And we could probably still use a little bit more. Like a good level. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and apply fertilizer. We've got a couple choices for you. We just got in a new line of organic fertilizers, Happy Frog. This is an all-purpose 645 organic, which will be a good balance for a foliage tropical. We also have, if you wanted to do a synthetic, we also have a grower special. It's a slow release 12-6-6 with a good micronutrient package. I've used this for probably a dozen years now. It's super good. It's specifically labeled for use in containers, so it does. If you're doing, you could use it on tropicals, pretty much anything. I've used it on just about everything. I wouldn't use it on orchids, but you know, just about every, or African violets, but you know, just about everything else. And especially if you're going to do a mixed pot of annuals, perennials, or even a shrub in a pot, this would be really good. Today we're going to go organic. And this guy, how much do you use? Okay, this is the first, second, and third rule about using fertilizers and chemicals and everything like that. Go ahead and read the instructions. Because this is a new one on me, so I didn't have any idea how much to use. But instructions on this say 2 tablespoons per gallon of soil. So this guy, we're probably looking at maybe close to 3 gallons of soil. So I'm going to put a few tablespoons, probably a couple tablespoons here in the bottom. Mix that around. And since it's a real porous soil, I could have mixed it in advance. There's more than one way to do things. You know, this is not the only way. But you can also apply a little water to get it to penetrate on down. And put the pot back in. And here's the other thing that the here's the other thing that the pot helps with. Makes it easy. To get the other soil in there. Like getting your hands dirty, this is the project for you. Okay, I got it about halfway up the side. Take a little more of the fertilizer. The potter's wheel is in my future. Of course, the other thing about having the pot in the middle is to keep from spilling it, you can just, I've got some water in the middle there. You can put some potting soil in there, it's got some water in it, and then you can just pull it over the edge, use your other hand to keep it where you want it. A little bit of a workout, but that's one of the fitness benefits of working in the garden. I get quite a bit working in my yard. I could go to the gym, but when you get finished working out at the gym, everything's the same. When you finish working out in your garden and your yard, you've improved things. You've got something to show for it. I guess that's part of being a little stingy, you know. When I spend my time, I want to have something to show for it. Do a little fertilizer. You may notice I bet there's a measuring cup in that fertilizer bag somewhere. You notice I haven't used it. I don't usually tell the plant that, but okay. And you can push it around if it's a little off center or whatever. You can get pretty abusive with a plastic pot and it doesn't mind. Okay. There we go. Give it a little twist. I hope the sides will hold. There we go. And when you do this, you can also look around to make sure that you don't have any gaps around, which we don't, since we applied a lot of moisture. I almost missed a step. We're gonna tease this, and I typically do it with my fingers to help the roots kind of break out. I don't get, and you can, with your fingers, you can kind of work them into the sides to loosen up the roots and the bottom. Of course, you can see this is a good sign. These little lighter colored roots, those are new guys. You know, you got new growth coming on. So we're loosening the bottom. This will help them kind of break out of that. And as I'm sticking my fingers in here, this soil in here is not overly particularly wet, so it's good that we thoroughly wet it. Excess water drains off. This background noise is part of the ambiance that we always try to shoot for when we're doing a video. When you hear the backup horn, it's always good at the end of it. You don't hear a scream, so we're good to go there. Okay, he's loosened up. And he's in there. And you can kind of push the sides around, but I'm going to set it down over here. That way I can have a better look at it. Get some of the baskets out of the way. Because it looks like it might not be exactly straight. That's one of my pet peeves. If I go to the trouble to pot something, especially if it's a standard like this, one of the things that achieves the look you're going for is that it's straight. So you have a surface that's level. There's a potter's wheel in my future, so I don't have to walk around this, but go a little that way. Kind of looking like it's going this way. So maybe go a little bit back that way. So you can push it up straight and then push the soil in there to hold it. Looks pretty straight that way. Looks pretty straight that way. Pretty straight there. Pretty straight there. And if you wanted to at this point, this guy might be maybe a tad, or maybe not, maybe a tad higher than I might want it, but you still have just about a 3/4 of an inch or an inch around the side. So it'll settle down a little bit more. And at this point, if you wanted to, you could apply a mulch to the top. It could be gravel. It could be, you know, a hardwood mulch, or, you know, anything of your choice. And once he's in there, and I think he's pretty straight, I'll water him again. That will also help get to settle and sink a little bit. Yeah, I think that's about right. And of course, what we see here, you can see these little strings. This is and that's a little limb that's past its usefulness. We'll take him out. But these other little strings on here, this is your one technical term for the video, and these are called adventitious roots. Roots that are not down in the soil, but you can see it's got several of them here. Here's one going all the way down. Kind of a neat, gives it a neat organic, you know, little bit of wild look. And then we can look in here and see. I thought we might have had a brown leaf or two in here. And get those guys out. And as these guys grow, some of the interior leaves will turn brown just because the new growth has shaded them out. They serve their purpose. They're ready to go. And that guy's ready to go. You can put him someplace to, here's another one. There's another one. Okay, I think we're cleaned up. He's ready to go. Then you can set him off someplace, let him drain, and he's ready to get growing. Of course, the other thing about doing some kind of a mulch on the top, typically the potting soils, not all of them, but most of them. I mentioned the perlite that's in them. It's a little flecks of white. You know, they're not, the potting soil is not made for looks. It's made to function to help the plant. So little specks of, and you might actually, the original plant, this one's got some slow release fertilizer pellets in it from the grower. Not the prettiest things necessarily. That's why if you do the little mulch on top, you get a real natural look, and you cover up those things. And I think I mentioned it, this one's a Ficus Benjamina. Okay, well, as usual, I tend to go over my time limit, so I probably won't get to do both of these, you know, on the segment. That's the Benjamina, and this one here is a Philodendron Salome. And you can kind of see why I thought maybe he's ready for a bigger pot. These are big, really vigorous tropicals. A really neat look. This guy goes really well, the green with that color pot. And he was, we'll do the same functions with him. And if I can get him to, there we go. If you have a hard time getting that pot off, you can cut it off. Or what I did with these, they got a hole in the bottom. I just stuck my printers in that. Made it easy to get it off. I'll tease his roots. You can see he's ready for a little more space. And this will be a nice step up. And he will get to be really big and impressive in that size pot. And I guess that'll do it for our potting duties for the day. Thanks.